obviously those of you that keep up with our social media will have seen that Vay is away at the moment. So that's why I'm going to be running this meeting with our special guest today. So some of you might know me, some of you might not. I'm Ben, the project manager for the Pro Player package. Would have been in touch with all of you over email or phone calls, but yeah, here we are. Our special guest today, he's been on before. He was in the meeting in May, but with the Women's World Cup on, we thought we'd bring him back. He's an ex-Manchester United schoolboy, and he used to be head coach of the Matildas, and he's also played a few games for the Socceroos as well. So, Greg, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
That's good. It's nice to see you. You've been keeping up with the Women's World Cup?
Absolutely. I'm absolutely loving it. I think it's brought up so many surprises. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful World Cup so far.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. The country's definitely showing up for it, showing everyone how big football is in Australia.
Yeah, and around the world, you know, it's the first time we've had this many countries playing in the World Cup. And I think it's shown by the results that we've seen, you know, some of the, you know, extraordinary results we've seen, that the women's game is live and well all around the world. Yeah,
exactly. So today's topic for the meeting is going to be about the FIFA Women's World Cup, and more specifically like mentality in football. So just to get us started, you've obviously been to the World Cup with the Matildas before and played at a very high level yourself. How did you prepare yourself mentally for a game as a player? And then as a coach, how do you prepare your players for like a big game in like the World Cup?
Well, all the work's done well before the game. You know, if you're talking about a particular game, you know, in a World Cup, then obviously there's a lot of preparation about the formation that we're going to play that's going to suit our players the best leading in to the World Cup. And then once you get there, you obviously have to be aware of your opposition and how they play and how we might need to adjust a little bit to see, you know, if we can nullify their strengths and obviously, you know, get the best out of us. So, you know, that's a very broad question, but I'd say the mentality always has to be that you have to be confident in yourself and the team and the preparation. So, you know, if you've done all the work prior to the competition, then you should be confident that what you've done will work, and all you need to do is go out and do that.
Just do your job. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And did you ever do you have one game specifically that you were very nervous for, or?
Yeah. And yeah, probably, well, without a doubt, being obviously from England originally, I played against England for Australia, and it was only my second international, third. I played against New Zealand twice, and then we played England, and I just wasn't prepared for it. You know, the New Zealand game, I was okay with because I played in New Zealand. I knew the players I was playing against. It was almost like playing, you know, against your mates. But then coming against England, you know, this was in 1991. They made the semi-finals of the World Cup in 1990, and we're a phenomenal team, and that was a whole different experience. And so preparing for the game was no different from preparing for any other game. But when the game came along and you stood alongside these legends and you stood alongside these brilliant players, a whole other set of emotions set in. And you just and that's where, you know, preparation comes in, because when you get in those situations, you just go to what you normally do. You just go to your, you know, your base, and habits. So that has to be right before you go in, you know what I'm saying? So I just went into that game, and I thought, you know, and I've always had that mentality that if you're not playing well, or let's say you don't have a good first touch, or you're not feeling well going into the game, something. My go-to was always, well, I'm just going to work really hard. I'm just going to work really hard and do the best I can and go and tackle and do all the basic things as well as I can. And that will get me back into the game. At least then you're giving something to the team.
Yeah.
So that was always my go-to was, well, I'm just going to work as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And then it sort of takes away from having to do something spectacular or score a goal or anything else. It was just, I'm just going to do the basics really well, and then I'll try and build on that. And so going into that England game, not going into the game, because going into the game, I was like, I was going into any other game. And in fact, being from England and playing against them, I wanted to prove that Australia wasn't some minnow, it wasn't some small country that they didn't have to worry about. I wanted to prove to them that we were a nation of footballers and we could play and we could give them a good game. So that was my mentality going into it. But I can tell you, I actually have no memory of the game. It was, I think the whole occasion was so big. I have to watch video because I can't remember anything in the game. I had a mate of mine from England call me up just afterwards, and he said, "Oh, that was a hell of a tackle you put on Stuart Pearce." Now, Stuart Pearce, who played for England, they call him Psycho. He was a very hard player, and he was marking me. And in fact, I've got his shirt which has blood on it after the game. But they said, "Oh, that's some tackle you put on Psycho," and honestly, I could not even remember it. I didn't know what he was talking about. So yeah, emotions do run high in those big games, and they can get the better. They can get the better of you, and that's why experience is so important. And going on to my time with the Matildas, I knew straight away that the first thing we had to do was get lots of games in before the World Cup and before the Olympics. Our most senior player had about 25 caps, and we were playing against America, who had 80 and 90 caps. And the first thing I said, well, we've got to get 30 caps in. We've got to get 30 international, and we're talking about in a 2-year span. We've got to get 30 internationals in the next 2 years, and we did it. And so the players were then used to going into that environment, because it's not an easy environment to go into. It's very difficult, not only physically and tactically and all the rest of it, but emotionally. It's very hard to prepare for something like that.
Yeah, can't imagine having the whole country watching you, especially how the Matildas are doing now. Every stadium's packed out, millions watching. But
I said it on a previous podcast, that this is something that the Matildas are not used to. The Matildas are not used to having this kind of support. We've never had a home World Cup before. We had the Olympics, but it wasn't the same. There was lots of other countries, lots of other sports. This is a focus on football by the world, around the world. In Australia, they've never had that. They've never had this kind of support, and that kind of support brings pressure as well. So it's new territory for the girls, and it should be seen as a positive.
Yeah, definitely.
Also it could also put an awful amount of pressure on them, and it's how they deal with that pressure that's going to be the telling thing.
Yeah, 100%. That actually brings me on. We had a question from one of our players on the program, which kind of links into that. It's from Zach Olsen. What effect do you think the success of the Women's World Cup will have on football in Australia?
Well, it should, and not just Australia. I think what we're hearing, I mean, some of the stories we're hearing, you know, from like countries like Jamaica who had to crowd fund themselves to get here, you know, I think it's sending a message across the world that women's soccer is a real thing. It's a real thing that people want to watch, that people engage with. It's a very professional sport. It needs support. It needs funding. It needs the proper attention. You know, what I mean by that is, you know, we need to pay attention to youth development. We need to pay attention to the whole process, which leads to a Matilda. You know, Matildas don't just turn up.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for a long time, and mostly in adverse situations. They should be in a better environment to develop. And so I think if this sends a message, the message should be, we need to pay attention to women's football, and we need to give it the credibility that it deserves.
Now, 100%. I think most people would definitely agree as well. Yeah. So when you were personally coming through academies, did you ever feel that it was not going well? And how did you manage that mindset? Like, did you ever doubt yourself or thought other players were better? And how did you manage that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my formative years were at Manchester United.
Yeah.
And, you know, that sounds incredible, I'm sure, to everybody. But as a boy in Manchester, it was just a thing, you know, it's just, okay, I'm at Manchester United. As an 11-year-old, you don't understand the scope of it.
Yeah.
All you know is, okay, I'm at United and that's good, you know, and I'm wearing the Man United kit, which is great, and I'm training at the Man United training ground. But as an 11-year-old, you know, it just everything that happens in your life as an 11-year-old is just, okay, well, this is just
Yeah.
right. You don't appreciate it really. So it doesn't affect you that much because you just think, well, this is normal, you know, this is what you do.
Yeah.
But definitely as time progressed through those years at United, I was playing with players who went on to play for the first team, who played in FA Cup finals, who were, in my opinion, far better than me. And I just thought, I'll never be as good as him. You know, I'll never be able to do what he does. And then looking at the pros, looking at the professional players who'd walk into training, they were huge. And I was very small. I didn't start growing until I was probably 15, 16. I was smaller than most of the kids. And I just thought, you know what, I'm never even going to be that big. You know, I'm just never going to be what they are. I just never believed that I could do what they're doing. I just never thought that. I just went along with it. I just did my best. I tried the hardest, and then just honestly, I never thought about the following year. It wasn't only until I was about 16 when I knew that at that age they select who's going to be signed professional, because we were schoolboys, so we weren't paid. We were schoolboys, and they were going to decide the next year, at the end of that year, who's going to be taken on as youth players. And it wasn't really professional. It was, I mean, in that you were actually paid and you were put in through college and school, and you know, you had your digs paid for and all that. It's not like it is now, but we knew that if they were serious about us, they were going to make a decision at that time. And that was the only time I really thought about it. And again, I thought, there's no way they're going to pick me. And they didn't. They picked two of us. And like I say, one of them went on to play in the FA Cup final for Man United. One of them went overseas. So yeah, so it was. I think when I think when you're young, you don't think about it so much. I think kids today probably do think about it more
Yeah.
than I did. As far as I was concerned, I just wanted to play the highest level I could, and I just wanted to play football for the best team I could play for. And that is my advice to any kid. Just play for the best team you can play for, and then try and be the best player in that team. And if you are, guess what? You're going to probably play for the team above.
100%. Yeah, I love that. Anyway, so transferring that to coaching days, are you able to pick up on a player dipping their mindset and behaviors? And how do you trigger themselves to get out of their heads and into the moment that they're in? So like if a player is to get stuck in their head, how do you communicate with them?
I just sort of say, look, press the reset button. Just press the reset button. Forget about everything else that just happened, and let's focus on this. So most kids are really good at some stuff. They're not good at other stuff. They're, things they'll make mistakes with, things they're really good at. Then they get to a point where they're really frustrated with the things that they're not very good at, or they made a mistake with, and just say, forget that. And you work on it in training. That's what training's for. I think what young players have to do is focus more on the training and enjoy the game. I think what they do is they enjoy training and focus on the game. And the thing is, you train more than you play. So focus on the training, do everything you can possibly do, and do the best you can do in training. And guess what? When you go into the game, it's all going to work because you've done it in training. And that's why my advice to coaches is don't get upset. I'm standing next to coaches across from me who are going berserk on the sideline and shouting and screaming at the kids. And I'm thinking, mate, don't you train? Don't you train? Because that's what training is for. This is, as a coach, is just observe what's going on, be calm, see what's happening and what's not happening, see what's going well and what's not. Bring them in and say, guys, remember we worked on this in training. This is what and be calm about it, because I can't see any benefit for a player of a coach going mental on the sideline. I just don't. And if he's telling you what to do when you've got the ball, he's not doing his job.
Training, you got to draw that in.
Well, because that's what training's for. You train to play. So the coach should be doing all the stuff in training and then let the kids try it out in the game. And we're talking now about development. We're talking about youth development. We're not talking about a senior team. We're not talking about first team. We're talking about young boys and girls who are learning the game. Teach them in the training sessions, let them go out and try it on the weekend. And don't get confused about the two, because the game is them just going and practicing what they've learned. Training is the learning. So if my advice to all the young players that are out there at the moment listening is focus on your training and then go and enjoy the game.
Yeah, perfect. Love that. And so when managing players at club level, is there certain qualities apart from technical skills that you look for in players, and what are they and why?
Definitely. Because you can have good technical players that aren't necessarily good for the team. And I read a book called Legacy, and I advise everybody to read it. It's a book about the All Blacks, and they are, believe it or not, the most successful sporting team in history. They have an 80% win rate over 100 years, right?
Yeah.
They are the most successful sporting team in history. and they have a policy and they have a culture that feeds from generation to generation, and it's about the team. It's about working for the team, and they have a policy that we don't have any idiots. They use a different word,
Yeah.
but no idiots. We don't want anybody here who's not prepared to work for the team. And when you're in a team sport, it's really important that everybody who takes the field is doing their best for the team. And that might mean sacrificing yourself a little bit, especially I played as a striker, and we had a thing called, doing the unselfish run. So we would make unselfish runs to drag defenders away from the area we wanted to penetrate, for somebody else to score the goal. So it's all about teamwork. It's a team game. It's about teamwork. So you don't want anyone who's in there really who's just all about themselves. So as a coach, even if they're a really good player, if they're not good for the group, there'd be a question mark over them. I'm not saying you get rid of them. You say you work with them and you say, listen, mate, you're the best player in the team, but you can't win it on your own. We've got another 10 players here who you need to be at their best so we can win. And if you don't work with them, it's not going to work. So yes, there are things that you look for in a player. And now, I'm talking now at the top level. When, we're not talking about socially. We're talking about top level. You have to be able to work in with the group and realize what the group needs to make the most of it. Because unfortunately, you could be a fantastic player in a poor team and you don't get recognized because, you didn't win the grand final or you didn't make the top four. So, people are not looking at you. So you need the team to do well. And so, so they play in those finals. So you get to that level. So people are actually watching you. And look, and if you do your best and it's not happening and you want to be a good footballer, you have to go and play for different. You have to go and play for the better team. And that's what I'm saying. It was my downfall a little bit as a younger player. I just wanted to play with my mates. But you get to a point where you can't play with your mates anymore. You have to play for the best team you can play for. And you'll walk into a changing room and you don't know anyone and they're not your mates. But you've all got one thing in common, and that is you want to win football games and you want to be the best you can. So you need that kind of attitude to succeed.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. Attitude, definitely a big thing with footballers. So obviously you've coached for a while now. What is one or a couple areas of like a weekly training program that is more noticeable now than it was, let's say, 20 years ago? What's the biggest difference in training and coaching programs?
Honestly, if you're talking about the top level, things have not changed that much. Things that happen off the training field have changed. But the game of football is the game of football, and it always has been for a long time. And I've said before that I think around the mid-90s, early 90s, where, don't forget, well, you can't forget, you probably were even born there, in 1984. In 1984, the Australian Institute of Sport was started, and sports science in this country played a big part in sport from that time. We learned that, we learned about nutrition, we learned about speed acquisition, we learned about how to be a better athlete, we learned about muscle mass and how to make it better. All the sports science went on around the mid-80s. And by the mid-90s, we understood it all. So
Yeah.
from the mid-90s till now, the sports science hasn't changed. We know about nutrition. We know how to get faster, bigger, stronger, quicker. We know all that. And in football, the tactics will change with the coach and with, you know, who you're playing against. So the training sessions really haven't or shouldn't have changed that much in the last 20 years. What has changed is what happens off the field, because the world changes. And, you know, I'm talking about social media, about listening to, you know, I mean, on social media, if you're in some, I don't know, Facebook or some group or whatever, you're hearing things from people you wouldn't normally speak to. And they might be negative, and you're taking that on board. And so there's all these things that happen outside of the game that are now relevant, that weren't part of the discussion 20 years ago. The discussion 20 years ago was all about football and being a good footballer. Now it's about things that happen outside of football.
Everything, yeah.
That you can't control some of it, and so you have to be able to deal with it. You have to either just, and my advice would be just get off it. Just do not even be on social media. Just deal with people face to face, and that's where you'll get the truth, because all the rest of it is nonsense and gossip. So the only thing that's changed, and again, I'm talking about elite level now in a professional environment. The only thing that's changed around a professional footballer in the last 20 years are things that are happening off the field outside of football.
Yeah, and that's what they say when the big players, they'll get 100 good comments and one bad one, and that's the one that'll stick with them. But
absolutely,
yeah, which is tough. But so as a technical director for a region, what kind of detail are you sharing and looking for with sub-regions and clubs to help with talent identification and training programs?
Talent identification has always been very easy. It's always been easy.
Yeah.
Because the best players shine. You can see them just watching a game. Now, I'm talking about coaches with a good eye. Now, what I mean by a good eye is these are coaches that have coached, have actually coached a team, because you can, as an observer, as a parent, as a fan, you can go and watch a game and you see this kid taking on 3 players and having a shot, and you think, oh, he's the best player. You don't notice the centre half who's intercepting passes, collecting the ball and giving a perfect pass in the midfield. You're not necessarily seeing the goalkeeper who, receiving a back pass comfortably and getting it out of there. You're not seeing all the other things that actually matter in a game. You're just seeing the guy that shines, that scores a great goal or does a fantastic, bit of skill. So with an educated eye, I think identifying a player is very simple, because they're just doing all the simple things well. And this is what I say to the young kids that I've got. I'm saying to them, before anything else, you have to do the basic things well. You have to do the basic things with both feet. What I'm talking about there is you have to control and pass a ball and receive a ball in the air, on the ground, with both feet. You have to do the basic things well. And then you can worry about all the things that, excite people and all the rest of it. But you cannot be a professional player unless you can do all the basic things well. So my advice, and this is what the skill acquisition program is meant to do is to give kids the basic fundamental skills that you need to play a game. And you know what? Then it's not that many. It's not that many. You think, oh, there's hundreds of skills. Yes, there is, but there's only probably 20 techniques that you need to learn to be able to play the game at a good level.
Yeah.
And that depends on your position. So as far as identifying players, you need a good eye, which means you need to know what you're talking about.
Experience.
Experience as a coach and as a player to say, and look, you might be a great striker, and so you look at the striker and say, oh, he's a good striker. But if you're a defender, you go, oh, well, he's a good defender. And the striker's not looking at the defender, and the defender's not looking at the striker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a coach who knows what he needs across the board within the team can say, yeah, he's good. And they might not do anything necessarily exciting in the game. They're just doing the basics very well. And on top of that, communicating. I think when you hear a kid talk, when you hear him talking to his teammates and encouraging them and doing whatever, you know that kid has got an idea about the game. You know he understands the game, and the game sense is something, again, it's another thing that you can't give a kid. It comes with experience. So when you see that in a young player, you go, all right, this kid knows what he's talking about. He understands the game. So they're the kind of things you look for, is doing all not making mistakes. Because, and just think of any kind of team. If the team doesn't make mistakes, they're going to be a very good side.
Yeah.
So don't make mistakes. Do all the basics properly. And there's going to be periods in the game where you have to try something. You have to try something out of the ordinary because you're stuck in a corner, or you're surrounded by people. You have to try things. There's no problem with trying things then. But when you've got the ball and you've got an obvious pass, just make that happen. And then a good coach with a good eye will go, he's a good player, because he's not making mistakes. I think we get carried away with looking at the best players in the world, think they have to be them. You don't, why? Because 99% of the other professionals are not like that. They just do the basics really well. They just control and pass and move and understand the game. They just do that really well. So 99% of all professionals, and there's a lot of them, are just doing the basics.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Back onto the topic of the meeting, obviously the Women's World Cup. We had a question from Lalu. Is the junior Matildas the main pathway for girls to be identified who are aspiring to be senior Matildas? And is it possible to still be considered for youth and senior selection if you're living overseas?
Yeah, the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. You are still, but and I had this problem 30 years ago. No, well, it's 20 years ago now when I was a Matilda's coach. We had players playing overseas in good competitions, and I had to travel over to watch them in those days, so I could see if they were good enough or not. Nowadays, because especially in the women's game now, it's great. And again, this World Cup has been so good for the women's game. It's opening eyes across the world in more than any other World Cup has done already, and we're only halfway through. So when I say you, if I'm the Matilda's coach or youth coach or anybody involved with any kind of selection with national teams, you now have a network of people overseas who you can call up and say, listen, this girl's playing for, Verona in Italy. She's 16, she's Italian, but she's Australian. Can you go and have a look? You can do that now. And then But what I'm saying to whoever that person is who's thinking of playing overseas or is playing overseas, you have to make the connection. You have to let people know. And again, I don't know how we're going for time, but I'll tell you this story about. I'll tell you about this story about a young boy I had when I was the director of coaching at BBC. This is probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I had a how old was he then? He was in year 8. So what's that? 12?
13. Yeah.
To 12, 13. Now, we did a coaching clinic at the school, and this kid, I'm watching there with a boy called Remo Buis, who's my first team coach, who played for the Brisbane Roar, who played in Switzerland, professional, knows his stuff. We're watching this game, and this kid just runs over, full pelt. The ball's going out. Everyone knows it's going out, but he runs over. He slides in, he scoops the ball back, saves it from going out, gets up, runs off, takes off. And I said to Remo, I said, when was the last time you saw a boy do that? Like, this kid was desperate to keep the ball in because he wanted to win so much, right? So I knew there was something in him. And within a couple of years, we had him in the first 11 at 14, playing under 19s. Anyway, cut long story short, by the time he got to 15, his mother was Scottish and his dad was Australian, but they thought they had a chance to go to the UK. So they said, oh, look, we're going to the UK and, can you get Aiden some trials somewhere? So we did. The boy's name is Aiden O'Neill, by the way. He plays for Melbourne Victory right now.
Yeah.
Now, this was when he was 15. So Aurelio Vidmar was the Joey's coach at the time, right? Under 17s national team coach. Now, I played with Vidi for the national team, and we played in Adelaide together. So I know him.
Yeah.
So when Aiden was 16, he was at Burnley playing in the under 18s. So I phoned Vidi up. I phoned Tony up, and I said, Tony, I said, when was the last time I called you? He said, you've never called me. I said, that's right. And the only reason I'm calling you now is because there's a boy at Burnley, 16. He's playing with the under 18s. He's a quality player. You need to get him in your Joeys. He said, oh, can you send me his information and send me his stats? I went, no, I can't. I can't do that. I said, you've got another Australian kid at Burnley. And I only knew this because I spoke to Aiden's dad.
Yeah.
And so the people there, phone them up, ask them. You do it. I can't help you there, mate. All I'm telling you is this kid is quality, and you need to look at him. So guess what? He didn't. So 2 years later, at 18 years old, Aiden is walking on the field at Anfield, playing against Liverpool for the first team for Burnley.
Yeah.
And they introduced the boy as this young Australian. And of course, all the alarm bells go back off here, like, Australian? What do you mean? And I said, mate, I told you 2 years ago. I told you 2 years ago. And you didn't do anything about it. So unfortunately, as much as we expect that our national team coaches and selectors and the national body will have all this covered, they don't. And so it's important that if you are going to do that, you let people know. Let people know who can actually talk to people, and let them know that, guess what, you've got this girl here, she's playing in America, and and she's killing it. You need to let the right people know, so they can do it, because unfortunately Australia at this time, and look, it's not just Australia, I can tell you, because coming from the UK, and I go back a fair bit, and obviously Ray does as well. they don't know anything about what's going on in Australia either. So, just because they got loads of money doesn't mean they've got the whole world covered. So you have to let people know, and you have to let people know who are in a position where they can actually communicate with the people who need to know, so they can keep a track of you. Look like you froze there a bit, mate. You there, mate? Is anybody else there?
Pregunta, Nicola, habla. Le di que sí.
Yeah, we are.
Hey, yeah, look, I don't know what's happened there, but it looks like he's been cut off for some reason. Is there any questions from any of you that you might want to ask right now?
How are you?
I'm well. Okay, hold on. Looks like my phone's going. Hello? Yeah. All right. Okay, well, I'm just going to be talking to the people while you're not there. Okay. All right. No worries. Bye. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it looks like there's a bit of a technical issue. So is any questions that any of you want to ask?
Hey, here. Okay, so hi, I'm Nicholas, and my question is, when you say the basics, what, like, can you be a little bit more specific of what the basics are?
Yeah, look, so the basics are being able to control the ball on the ground and in the air with both feet and with your chest and with your thigh and however the ball comes to you. So let's just think, just picture a game of football and imagine a ball comes to a player. Now it might come to him in the air or on the ground. If it comes to him in the air, he's got to deal with it. If it comes to him on the ground, he's got to deal with it. And it comes to his left side or right side, he's got to deal with it. So the first thing he does is controls the ball. What does he do after that? He either passes the ball or runs with the ball. So the next thing is he has to be able to pass the ball with both feet, and he has to be able to run with the ball, move it left and right. He has to be able to do that. And he might dribble with it, and then he has to go past people, and then he has to pass to somebody else. And he might have to pass to them on the ground or in the air. So they're the basic things: control, pass, and move. Control the ball in the air, pass it accurately, move with or without the ball. Now, without the ball, that means getting into a position where you can get the ball again. So the basics are controlling the ball, whether it be in the air, your head, chest, thigh, foot, right, left, you have to do all that. Pass the ball, you have to be able to pass it left foot, right foot on a short distance. Obviously, if you look at a longer distance, you're going to use your favorite foot because you're stronger with that foot. But you have to do the basic things with both feet. And then it's understanding your position and your role in the game. What am I expected to do in my position? So let's take it from the back. Defenders, what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to stop them scoring, get the ball, and then start the play with your team. Win it and give it to your team to start the play, to start the attack. You've got to do that, those basic things. In midfield, same thing. We've got to get it off them and then start the attack. But we've got to receive it off our defenders and give it to the strikers or dribble it up there. As a striker, what you're trying to do, you're trying to create goals or score goals. So you've got to get in a position to do that first. Then you've got to receive the ball. Then you've got to be comfortable setting your players up or scoring a goal. They're the basics. And I always say to my players, self-analysis, like we all do it, whether we know it or not. We all, after a game, we go, did I play well? Or I didn't play well. Oh, shit, I didn't play well, or I did play well. I had a good game today. But you have to put that in perspective. What makes you think you had a bad game? What makes you think you had a good game? Why are you saying that? So you have to look at what your job is. So, did I work hard? Yes. Okay, there's a tick. Did I control the ball and pass the ball well? And did I get it to my teammates? Yes. Well, there's a tick. Did I, set up play? Did I score goals? Did I save goals if you're goalkeeper? So you got to have these 4 or 5 things that are relative to your position. Not 10, not 20. 4 or 5 things that you need to do. You need to work hard. You need to tackle. When you've got the ball, you need to pass it to your teammates. You need to go forward. You need to try and score. That's really it. Now, then after the game, you say, well, did I do that, and that? And after the game, if you do that, you might find out there's only one thing you didn't do really well. You might, if you're a striker, you say, oh, I didn't score that goal. I had a bad game. No, you didn't have a bad game. You just did one thing wrong. You did 90% right. So you have to judge yourself properly. You have to think about the game properly. Like, what did you actually do? And when you do that as well, you also start to contribute more, because you say, you know what, my job is also to defend. I've got to get back and win that ball back. And then once I've got it, I have to give it to a teammate and we have to get forward. And you start to think about the basic things that I've mentioned earlier. And if you're doing them right, you're having a good game. You've played well. You might only be one thing. I've done it myself. I remember as a striker, I missed that chance. I've had a nightmare. No, I didn't have a nightmare. I played really well. I just missed that one chance. So you've got to be smart about your self-analysis, about how you analyze yourself after the game. And you've got to be honest as well. Did I really work hard enough? Did I tackle anybody? Did I defend at all? Did I encourage my teammates? You've got to be honest about it as well. And once you understand what your role is, what you're supposed to be doing out there, then you can analyze yourself properly. And when you analyze yourself properly, you can work on the things that you didn't do well and you can get better. In fact, I was listening. Do you all know Marcus Rashford?
Yep.
Man United striker, right? I was listening to a podcast with him today, and he says, and he was being asked about what he works on, and he said, I work on my strengths as well. And the first time I heard that, I thought, wow, yeah, because, you always think about, oh, I've got to work on my weaknesses, but you got to work on your strengths as well. You got to make sure that they're really good. because what that does, it brings up, it lifts your weaknesses as well. It helps you in both ways. It's a really good interview. You should listen to, if any of you are strikers, you listen to him. He's on, he's been interviewed by Gary Neville. But it's a good interview. I listened to it today. So yeah, look, that's what I mean by the basics. The basics are, you know, your control, pass, and movement. You know, just doing all them right.
Yeah, I
Thank
think one
you.
of his favourite players to reference is David Beckham, who obviously he was a great footballer in all aspects, but most of all was just known for how he could whip a ball and had that one thing perfected. And yeah, it's all he really needed, just to.
Well, yeah. But the other thing about David Beckham is, and you know, what you don't hear about is Bex was first to train and last to leave. He put a hell of a lot of work into it. It wasn't just his free kicks. He was the fittest. If you asked the Man United players at the time, he was the fittest player in the team. He did a hell of a lot of work up and down the line and as well. You know, he's remembered for his free kicks and his crosses, but he put a hell of a lot of work. And again, I love talking about Man United because that's my team.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you another thing about Ryan Giggs. Now, Giggs was the first of the class of 92 to make the first team, and he was, you know, he was always going to be a first team player. But what Alex Ferguson said to him was, listen, Ryan, to be a great player, you have to be a great passer of the ball. So just dribbling past everybody and whipping a crossing willy-nilly ain't going to do it. You have to be a great passer of the ball. And if I can say three things to everybody: control, pass, and move. You need to control the ball, you need to pass it well, and you need to have good movement. You got those three. I'm talking on the technical side now. You got those three things, you can be a player.
Yeah, 100%. And we just got a few more questions from some of our players that they've sent through. So this one's from Maya. And she says, while you were coaching the Matildas, what was your favorite experience and why, if you had to name one?
Oh, favorite experience. We had some good tours, and you know, I'll take the question for what it is, favorite instead of most important. Most important, but my favorite was we went to Europe. We went to 7 countries in 6 weeks, and it was a great bonding experience for the girls. We'd never done it before. They'd never done that kind of tour before. And we played, like I said, we played 7 internationals in 6 weeks. But as a group, we bonded really well. And we didn't stay in the best hotels. It wasn't as glamorous as you might think it is.
Yeah.
But we did things, we went to a country and we explored the country a little bit. We went out and did, we just went and saw the town and just saw things, together. And as a group, it made us so much closer. And it was probably the most enjoyable period of time. Even though, we were away from home and it wasn't nice, and that wasn't easy, I should say.
Yeah.
But the result of doing that was we were so close when we came back, and the team was so more unified. And I understood more about the girls as well, personally, and how they handled things. So going on tour for a long period of time, or just being together for a long period of time, is a really educational thing as a group of players.
Yeah, perfect. And next question is from Thomas Evans. And he says, I've been told I overthink or think too much on the field. How do you let go and play freely on the field? And did you ever have a pre-game ritual or like a routine you did before every game, or just prepared differently for each one?
No, I did have a ritual, and I understand completely what he means about being inside his own head. And in fact, my ritual was to clean my car
Yeah.
I used to wash my car every morning before a game, just so I wasn't thinking about it, to get my mind off something completely off the game, because as he said, you can overthink it, and you shouldn't overthink it, because you cannot plan for every single thing that's going to happen in a game. So what you've got to do is plan. And so what I did, I washed my car and clean it inside out. And then I'd head to the game, and I'd be with my wife or my kids or whatever, and I wouldn't say a word. I'd just be focused on the game, and my focus was who was playing against, because you know who you're playing against at that level.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to do the best, just going to work hard. It was along those lines. It wasn't anything specific. It was, I'm just going to go my hardest. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to score a goal. I'm just going to, it was all positive thinking. It wasn't any worry.
Yeah.
And I had plenty of reason to worry. I played against some really good teams and really good players, but you can't worry. You can't worry about that. You've got to think that I'm going to do the best I can, and that's going to be great. And I'm going to enjoy it. So you've got to stop worrying about, I mean, look, it's called a game because it's a game. Enjoy it. Love it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Enjoy it. And you hear from there's not a single, you couldn't listen to any single professional youth team coach who doesn't tell the kids, just go out and enjoy it. At the top time, they say, just go and enjoy it. You can hear it. You can hear the coaches now in the World Cup saying, we just want to go out and enjoy it. Enjoy this experience, because you're never going to get it again. Like, the game needs to be enjoyed, not worried about. It needs to be enjoyed. Go and enjoy it. Yes, there's going to be nerves, but don't mistake those nerves for fear. It's not. It's just like, it's like, say you're going on a roller coaster. You got the nerves because you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So that you've got to think of it like in those terms. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And the nerves are just if you've got no nerves, you're not ready to play. So they're supposed to be there. Ignore them and use them for the right reason. They're there is because they're just getting you ready to go and enjoy yourself and have a great time.
Yeah, 100%. And final question for today is been sent through from Luke Turnbull. And he says, at what age did you decide you wanted to play professional football? And what did you do once you made the decision to make this reality? Was there a certain turning point, or just always wanted to?
There was. Like I say, I was at Man United till 16, and I never thought I was going to be a footballer. I just didn't understand where I was. I didn't appreciate it. I just went along with it. And then when I left, when they got rid of me, and it was pretty brutal, by the way. I don't mind sharing it with you. We had an end of year function at Old Trafford in the executive suite. The first team coach was there. We had, a normal, like a normal presentation night, well done, play of the year, all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the night, our coach got us together in a corner and said, well done, boys, been great. And we're going to keep a couple of you on, and it's Alan and John. And the rest of you, I hope you have a good, enjoy the rest of your football career. It was like that. It was like that. It was like a Band-Aid. Oh, you're gone. See ya. It's brutal.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect to be picked anyway. I went, oh, okay. And yet Alan and then they did deserve to be selected. So I was like, right, okay. And I just went and played with mates. And it was somebody else who said, listen, he's playing semi-pro. You should come and play for us. I've told the coach you're good enough. So I went, all right. So I went and played for them. And then he was saying, oh, he was sort of recommending me to play higher again. But it wasn't until I left England, because I was still playing with mates, even though I was playing semi-professionally, I was still playing with mates as well. And I just was enjoying football and not even thinking seriously at all. But when I went to New Zealand, and that was only because a mate of mine knew somebody over there and said, oh, you know, do you want to play over there? And the only reason I went is because my brother was in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even going to bother. But when what happened was when I got there, I thought, you know what? This club, they've paid to me to come over to the other side of the world, and they're paying me to play for them. I'm going to take this really seriously now. I'm going to give everything I've got to make sure that they feel like they've spent the money wisely and that they, you know, they were glad. And it was only when I got paid that I thought, right, I've got to give my best now.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I just played to enjoy it, and I just, hey, don't get me wrong, I give everything in every game. I wanted to win. I never went into a game thinking I don't care. I went into every game thinking I want to win this and I want to play really well. I did that in every game I ever played. But I never thought I had a chance of making it until I was getting paid. And then I thought, wow, someone's paying me to do something I love. I'm gonna really commit to this.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think we just got one more question that got sent through on the chat from Emmanuel. He says, how difficult was it playing professional football? Like, obviously you played at a few different levels and stuff like that. And I want to know, what was the hardest level that you played at, and how can you describe it to people that obviously have never played at a high level like that?
It was actually harder at the lower level.
Yeah.
It was harder. Like when I say the lower level, I'm saying semi-professional.
Yeah.
When, that just, the level just before professional, that was really hard. I'm talking about training. They run you into the ground. The game itself, you were getting kicked, every minute of the day. Like every time you had the ball, you were getting smashed. It was really a battle. Once I moved up a level, there's more respect, for your abilities. So someone's not going to come in and smash you. And the training was more directed, more specific to what you're actually going to be doing on the field, not just running 10-mile, it was more specific. So it actually got easier as you got higher. I'm talking about physically now. It was physically less demanding the higher I got. But, and again, I come from a period where the tackle from behind was legal, where you could go in and smash people and it wasn't a problem. And that was more prevalent at the lower levels. At the higher level, you try and go and smash someone, they just skip past you. So you were more wary of your tackles, and you had to be smarter about the way you tackle people. But it was more difficult at the lower level. But I think trying to put that in today's terms, and I'm in the country area, and what these kids have to go through is the commitment is the hardest thing. Is being in a car for an hour to get to training and things like that, getting to training and then focusing on that little time you have to train. That's the difficulty. And that's why the desire and the love of the game is most important. And you can't give somebody that desire and love. They either desire the game and they love the game, or they don't. But I can tell you, and it's probably a good note to finish on, is that when I've been around Europe, and I have done a number of times, talking to coaches about youth development, the same message comes through time and time again. When I say, what do you look for in a player? There's 4 things. There's technique, personality, they call it, speed, and game sense, right? Now, they have different names for it, So
Yeah.
game sense means, you know, they understand the game. They've got, you know, they understand, you know, how the game works. The speed, obviously, you need the games, you know, you can't be slow these days. Technique, again, obvious. Personality, what do you mean by personality? I mean his attitude, his desire, his, you know, his approach to the game, the way he thinks, you know, that his attitude. And when I ask them, what's the most important of those four things, it always comes back to personality, which means the desire, the drive, the ambition, because you're going to have hurdles. You're going to have hurdles to get over. And if you haven't got the drive and the ambition and the willingness and the character to get over those hurdles, you're not going to make it, because no one has had an easy ride to professional football. Nobody. And so those difficult times where, oh, I've got to do this, oh, I've got to go out when I don't really want to train, I've got to go, I've got to work hard, I've got, you know, you've got to push through those barriers, you've got to jump over those hurdles. The personality, the ambition, the drive, the character is what's going to get you over that. And so, you know, you have to have that. No professional player does not have that.
Yeah, no, perfect. Well, I think that wraps up June. Thank you, Greg. It's always a pleasure. Do you have anything else you want to add to finish it off?
No, I just want to say, you know what? Watch the Women's World. You know, boy or girl, watch this World Cup. It's so amazing. It's so good. It's just more blowing my mind. There's going to be more surprises. I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful tournament.
Yeah, 100%. And for all the players on the meeting, and obviously the players that couldn't attend, I'm going to share out the recording over the next few days. So you guys will have access for this meeting to watch it back as you please. But that's all right. Thank you. I'll see you next time, Johnny.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Same to you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.